We are the news.
They hope to accomplish.
I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may. When you were carrying out that incredible moonwalk, did you find that the surface was equally firm anywhere, or were there harder and softer spots that you could detect? And secondly, when you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
In rather flat regions, the footprint would penetrate perhaps a half an inch or sometimes only a quarter of an inch and gave a very firm response. In other regions near the edges of these craters, we could find that the foot would sink down maybe 2, 3, possibly 4 inches. And in the slope, of course, the various edges of the footprint might go on up to 6 or 7 inches, and compacting this material would tend to produce a slight sideways motion as it was compacted on the material underneath it. So we feel that you cannot always tell just by looking at the terrain what the exact resistance will be as your foot sinks into a point of firm contact. So one must be quite cautious in moving around in this rough terrain.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said, about stubbing your toe at the point of landing because the surface was obscured by dust. Do you see any way around that kind of problem for future landings on the moon?
I think the simulations that we have at the present time to enable a pilot to understanding the problems of a lunar landing, that is a simulator and the various lunar landing training facilities and trainers that we have will do that job sufficiently well. Above that, I think it's just a matter of pilot experience. And of course, the little bit of dispersions in the maneuvers, such as the DLI burn on the backside of that ignition, and there is no way of compensating until you get to final phase for that error.
Based on your own experience in space, do you or any of you feel that there will ever be an opportunity for a woman to become an astronaut in our space program?
I should hope so.
I'd like to refer back to something that Neil Armstrong said a while back, that there was so much out there you would like to have done. As it was, you ended up a considerable number of minutes behind schedule. Is that because the schedule was overloaded for the EVA, or can we expect all astronauts, when they reach the moon for the first time, to enjoy themselves and spend as much time doing so as you seem to?
We plead guilty to enjoying ourselves. As Buzz mentioned earlier, we're recommending that we start future EVAs with a 15 or 20-minute period to get these kinds of things out of the way. Get used to the surface and what you see, adapt to the 16G and maneuvering around, and probably we just included a little more in the early phase than we were actually able to do.
Two questions. Where did the weird sounds, including the sirens and whistles, come from during the trans-Earth coast?
So much more pronounced.
As for Mr. Armstrong, had you planned to take over semi-manual control, or was it all?
Manual phase than we would have planned in order to find a suitable landing area.
Many of us and many other people in many places have speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
try that?
After you.
Well, I believe that what this country set out to do was something that was going to be done sooner or later, whether we set a specific goal or not. I believe that from the early space flights, we demonstrated a potential to carry out this type of a mission. And again, it was a question of time until this would be accomplished. I think the relative ease with which we were able to carry out our mission, which of course came after a very efficient and a logical sequence of flights, I think that this demonstrated that we were certainly on the right track when we took this commitment to go to the moon. I think that what this means is that many other problems perhaps can be solved in the same way by taking a commitment to solve them in a long time fashion. I think that we were timely in accepting this mission of going to the moon. It might be timely at this point to think in many other areas of other missions that could be accomplished.
Well, everybody looking at me? Well, to me, there are near and far-term aspects to it. On the near term, I think it's a technical triumph for this country to have said what it was going to do a number of years ago, and then, by golly, do it, just like we said we were going to do it. Not just perhaps purely technical, but also a triumph for the nation's overall determination, will, economy, attention to detail, and 1,001 other factors that went into it. That's short term. I think long term, we find for the first time that man has the flexibility or the option of either walking this planet or some other planet, be it the moon or Mars or I don't know where. And I'm poorly equipped to evaluate where that may lead us to.
I just see it as a beginning, not just this flight, but in this program, which has really been a very short piece of human history, an instant in history, the entire program. It's a beginning of a new age.
That was just an excerpt from the first interview or press conference that the astronauts made. So that's John Collins, Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin, after they had allegedly been to the moon. So, and they looked a bit uncomfortable. You should watch the whole thing. They look really, really uncomfortable. They don't look like they're over the moon or excited about, you know, the greatest achievement that man could possibly make, especially back in the 60s. And Collins contradicted his, well, he didn't contradict his fellow astronauts, but he said he didn't see any stars, but he wasn't on the moon. He was orbiting the moon. And he was going around to the dark side of the moon where the sun glare would not be an issue. So, you know, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, welcome to the show. This is going on YouTube. So this might be the first time that you've seen me and Rohan for a while. Today, we're going to carry on with discussion on the moon. So I've got a couple of videos and some pictures and stuff for talking points. If you like what we're doing, then hit like, hit subscribe, share the video, especially as Darren of Plymouth has been killed off. And every Twitter account I try to open at the moment, I just get hounded and shut down. So my ability to promote these videos, it has been drastically reduced, which is a bit of a fucking cunt, excuse my French. But anyway, how are you, Rohan? You all right, mate?
Oh, good. Yeah, finally out of the YouTube gulag. Yeah, ready to
Yeah,
moon
yeah,
again.
well, I've had to wait till one of my strikes disappeared because I've already probably said a couple of naughty words and didn't even realise it. So if I got another strike, they were going to take the channel down. So my world is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they restrict my access to these free speech platforms.
Yeah, censorship's a bitch.
Yeah, censorship's a bitch. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the moon. Any comments on that video?
Yeah, as you said, they definitely seem to not be that infused. I mean, even like how soon after was that interview from them getting back from the mission?
I think it was a few weeks because they had to do a quarantine.
So they had a few weeks to decompress. It's not like they immediately landed. Because I'm just thinking there's a lot of obviously they've been heavily coached. Like the way that they make huge pauses before every answer, like they've been very, very heavily coached. It was very interesting that Armstrong was coached to kind of do that whole Greta Thunberg turn it into some woke shit sort of thing. Where it was like, yeah, we've reached the moon, but this really shows that we can fix other problems if we put our mind to it. Like, inject.
It's a great technical achievement for the USA. Got that on camera. Did you get that on camera?
Yeah.
Over the other side of the Bering Sea or wherever it is, wherever the strait is between Canada and Russia, they'll be watching us. So if you watch the whole interview, they come out, they're nervous, they look down, they don't smile particularly. It's almost nervous giggling and laughing, when they talked about women being astronauts, God forbid, back in the 60s, that was a fucking brave question, wasn't it? And
when was that? Wasn't it Challenger? The one that blew up had that female teacher on it, didn't it? When was that? Was that 80s?
86.
86, yeah. Like, so it wasn't until the was that the first woman in it?
I think there had been other women. I mean, the Russians.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, like, when was the first female astronaut? Because it wasn't exactly that far after. So I don't think. No. I think the feminist, because the feminism movement began in that time, and it was definitely making headway. The woke shit was around even back then. So
there was an early sort of primordial egg of the ideology just getting ready to grow into the terror that it is today. So anyway, their answers didn't seem like first-hand experiences, and there have been numerous sort of analysis by body language experts and experts who are good at identifying lying and with body language, and they're not being honest or truthful in their statements, and they're not necessarily talking from real world experience with the sort of basic conclusions that I got from listening to those experts. And the answer to Moore's question about the stars, it just doesn't stand up. That Collins, I think it was Michael Collins, who was orbiting the moon, couldn't see the stars, or that they couldn't see the stars in lunar transit from Earth to the moon. That makes no sense. There's never been any discussion on the stars from any of the astronauts that had landed on the moon, which is weird. You'd think it'd be one of the most important things that you'd look at. One of the most important things. To have a clearer view of the universe that we live in, and from a human eye as well, So, and you take pictures. You take a camera to get pictures of that as well. Look, there's a galaxy here we've never seen before. We didn't even know it was there. Look, that's what you do, wouldn't it, if you went to the moon? But that would be too difficult to fake. So that's the argument why there's no discussion of the stars, or none of them in the star pictures that we showed in the first conversation we had on the moon landings, was because astronomers like Moore. What was his first name? What was Moore's first name? The guy who asked
Patrick Moore.
Patrick Moore.
Oh, was that was young Patrick Moore?
That was a young Patrick Moore.
That just connected in my head. I was like, no wonder his voice was so fantastic. I was just like,
and he was so English.
Yeah. Good old Patrick.
Stars. So if they try to fake it by painting stars or creating an image as a backdrop to their lunar excursions, than somebody like Patrick Moore, who could tell you if a star was out of place just like that, because that's his, that was his fucking bag. He would know, wouldn't he? Or other astronomers, they would know. They'd go, no, that's the North Star. What's it doing south? You got that star in the wrong place. Yeah, it'd be too difficult to fake. So, and they couldn't say painting galaxies and other objects in the sky in the backdrop, because when we did get to the moon, or when we did get into space or put Hubble out there, then we'd go, where's that galaxy that we saw on the moon landings? It's not there anymore. That'll be that, it's a problem. So yeah.
And even if you give them the benefit of the doubt and say like, oh, they're very sort of shy, reserved people, it's like, because even I always try to even if I try to steel man that situation as much as possible, like if you take the reaction of like Shatner just going into orbit, and he comes back and he's just like,
drop back down,
he's basically crying, and he's just like, my life has my brain has just gone.
Can you imagine landing on the moon?
I'm just thinking, like, if I was asked the question, like, what does it mean to land on the moon after I've been to the moon? Like, I'd start going off on some deep emotional thing about like those, like the lines, the small step for man and the giant leap for mankind. Now we can start our journey into the stars and be like unify behind this effort. Like, instead they give these very bland, like tutored answers,
and there's
while
no
looking very this is the thing, there's no emotion, there's no for lack of a better word, there's no soul in what they're talking about. Everything is just clinical, and that is a good, I'm not an expert on the body language stuff, but I know enough to know that a great indication of lying is when you don't have that emotional pop. That's why that one truthful statement where he's just like, I don't remember seeing any stars. That's the one statement in that whole thing where there's emotion in his voice. You can tell there's something else.
That popped out, didn't it? It just popped out.
So it's difficult to watch that and not be like, why are you not more? Surely you'd be a lot more excited. You've just achieved the greatest technical and sort of endurance feat that any person has to this point.
Be in tears, wouldn't you? You could be in tears at the magnificence of your experience.
Just someone mentioning like what it means would just make you tear up. You'd just be like, wow, like just like how can I describe to you the magnitude of standing on another body, and
looking at Earth.
And that's the thing, I don't want to obviously use that as kind of proof to say that they're lying, but it's so incredibly odd and suspect, and either these people are just, I'd love to see some footage of just their behavior, because if these people are just like the most kind of autistic, socially awkward, like reserved people ever, then maybe there's some, but I mean, Armstrong, I reckon he's probably quite a laugh at a pub, or it was quite a laugh at. So
we're going to discuss Armstrong. I mean, I've not got any I've only got images for talking points, but my first talking point will be Neil Armstrong, and my last talking point will probably be Neil Armstrong as well. I've got another video of a speech that he gave. It's quite famous because he made sort of cryptic comments in it, but we'll leave that towards the end. So I will either upload the whole video of their first interview onto my channel, or I'll just stick a link at the bottom. I'll see how naughty I'm feeling, and watch it all, because it's weird right from the very beginning when they walk in and they're nervous and they're fiddling with the pens and stuff, and they're looking down and not at the audience. It gives the impression that they did not want to be there.
Well, the looking down, I said the main reason that's a prime thing is like any dog owner will know this. Like, what does a dog do when you catch them doing something naughty? Like, how do they behave? And it's like they, it's as I said, it's one of those things where the whole body language expert stuff is it's one of those things which you can never say is proof, but there's a lot of there's a preponderance of evidence and suspicion there. There's everything lines up together.
I'll try and link something from the body language experts, but yeah, they tear it apart. Right, let's look at some pictures. So,
excellent.
Share screen. So yeah, so we discussed. Yeah, I mean, just look at them. I've just taken this still from the video, and I've got my little cursor. I don't know if you can see the cursor, pink one, on Collins here, Michael Collins.
Yeah, Collins is obviously the most honest of the three, because he's the one that made the slip, and he's the one that has the most obvious kind of resentful body language. Like he has clear resentment there in that image.
He doesn't like lying.
Because the thing, me speaking personally, I wouldn't be able to. Like, I would not be able to lie on a stage like that. Like,
I don't think, and I think they all struggled, apart from Buzz Aldrin. He seemed on it.
I don't know. My opinion is that I would say that Armstrong is the most, maybe not the best liar, but he seems to be the one that's most okay with delivering these pre-trained responses.
Yeah, maybe.
That would be.
He was the technical guy, though, wasn't he? He was the pilot.
Yeah, so, but he's a lot more the compartment, because he delivers the longer, more clearly the more prepared statements.
Yeah. So Armstrong is the first guy that I want to talk about. There he is, all-American hero, fucking looks the part. He's got his spacesuit on, flag. So that's supposed to be Armstrong now, flag, not waving in the wind.
Oh wait, hang on. Did I get it wrong? Did I get them mixed? Was it Aldrin on the far left, and then
Aldrin was on the far left.
Oh, so it was Aldrin. Yeah, for some reason I thought Aldrin was Armstrong. Yeah. So it's Aldrin. Yeah.
Aldrin seemed to be the one that had no problem.
Yeah. Never mind. Yeah. I got it completely. I got them mixed up. Never mind.
Collins definitely didn't want to be there. He's playing with something in his hands, and he looks there as a man with a lot on his mind. I know it's just a still, I could have made it look like anything. He didn't look happy either. He was being very careful of what he was saying. Whereas both,
I mean, that's why I say it's all pinch of salt stuff. But I mean, again, it's like you look at that man's face, and it's like recognizing feelings and emotions in people is one of the most attuned human sort of things there is, right? Like we are built, and just look at that man's face. It's like what impression does that give?
You might also be thinking, fuck, I just let something slip that I shouldn't have.
Yeah. But just think of what expressions you make. It's like when you're contemplating on something and you're just holding something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It could be that he's worrying like whether or not he left the gas on, but he's definitely contemplating something.
I do that all the time. Irons. I always worry about leaving my iron on.
I burned a carpet once with an iron.
If I have done, it's not going to fall over. And then I think, fuck, what if my cat knocks it over? Anyway, Darren's mind. So Neil Armstrong, so this man is the man who made that one great leap for mankind. He's the guy who's allegedly first stepped onto the moon. Who photographed him doing that, or how they did that, I don't know. They say there was a camera on the lander prepared for it outside. Okay, if they say so, but I, find it odd. This is 1960s, 70s, 1969. He only ever gave NASA sanctioned interviews and conferences, and presentations. They were all sanctioned by authority, by the intelligence establishment, the NASA. Okay, he never just went on. He may have gone on talk shows, but they were all sanctioned. I don't think he did. He never reveled in his achievement. He never ever, he never made it. The greatest achievement, the greatest living human being, the greatest American hero. He never made a lot of it, which is quite odd. Yeah, but more odd are the reports that he basically moved to a small town in America. He lived at home. He was a reclusive person. He stayed away from everybody. He had no pictures of himself, the moon landing, any of the pictures, or, like that picture of him, the flag. He had no memorabilia, no nothing in his house. And he never talked about the moon landings unless it was sanctioned, like part of his duty with NASA. That's odd. And you can check this. You can go back, if you're listening to this all year round, you can go back and find Neil Armstrong interviews. There ain't many of them.
I'm just wondering to what extent that is procedural though, because I know like from old Elon and his company that NASA is considered a national security thing, right? It's basically like it has similar rules to a branch of the military. So our astronauts, like was he still like employed as an astronaut as NASA, or did he leave after the mission? Like I'm wondering to what degree are they allowed to freely communicate with the press, because it may have been something where he was contractually forced to not do that, but but even so, you'd think that it's kind of bizarre for him to choose the hermit life rather than
he went hermit.
Going full hermit, at least be, because that's bizarre for someone who would choose to be an astronaut, right? Someone who's quite a hands-on person. You think, I guess that they're a loner if they want to be an astronaut, but they'd at least be a pillar in their community.
I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't, but he became he was known as being very reclusive, quiet, and he had no pictures of any of his achievements. The greatest achievement in mankind's history.
Yeah, that's definitely
none
bizarre.
of that in his house. And that's odd, yeah. And obviously, you're just going to be having to take my word for it, and you'll have to go and have, if you're listening to this, go and check this out. You'll find it's, quite true. And in the press conferences and speeches and all the rest of it that he did do for NASA, he makes cryptic comments. And I have got a video which I'll leave to the end rather than listen to his whole speech. You can listen to it at the end of this video. You'll hear that he does make some unusual comments in one of his last speeches, which I think was either celebrating 25 years or 50 years of NASA's history. And he did it to sort of a bunch of school kids with President Bill Clinton, who himself wrote in one of his, in an autobiography, that he was suspicious of the moon landings, and that an old man told him when he was a boy that, they can fake anything on the TV, out, and was questioning the moon landings to him then. So Bill Clinton, it had that in one of his books. Yeah, he subtly questioned the validity of the moon landings, which is odd, isn't it, from somebody who was prior to presidency or actually as a president.
I guess the Bill Clinton said a few smart things in his time,
Yeah. Just because he's a fucking cunt.
And he definitely did inhale. I've been to that bar in Oxford where he supposedly doesn't inhale, and they've got like this big mural on the wall.
Doesn't inhale.
No.
Yeah, no, you've lost me. Are you talking about?
He told a story about smoking weed at Oxford, but he said he didn't inhale.
Yeah,
that was it, and it became this whole joke of him saying like, but I didn't inhale. It's like bollocks, Bill. Like,
I think others have said that. It's like fucking Michael Gove saying, "Yeah, I had some coke, but I didn't snort it."
But it's just when everyone does the impersonations, they always go for that, like, I did not inhale. It's like one of their first ones. He was a wizard on the saxophone. That's one thing I'll give Bill. Like he knew how to play the sax.
I quite like Bill Clinton. I did, but then I didn't know. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He just might have married a bad person. Yeah.
Well, considering what we have to deal with these days in terms of politicians, it's like Bill back in the day. It's like, it doesn't look too bad.
No, it doesn't look too bad. So anyway, Neil Armstrong, a reclusive loner who never talked about the moon landings and had no memorabilia of the moon landings or pictures in his home. And it might be that he was just so sick of it. All he ever heard all his life was fucking moon landing, and he just wanted to withdraw from it. And I get that, it's like COVID, isn't it? We hear about it's fucking COVID, and I just end up like curling in the ball in the corner because I'm sick of it. Anyway, moving on. We said we wouldn't use the word COVID. We'll probably get this video
Use
banned.
the coof.
Okay, so just before we sort of talk about, because the main reason we're having this conversation is why would they fake it, which is what we're going to get onto in a minute. But just some of the other interesting things about stuff that happened on the ground. So we're talking about the astronauts. These three astronauts are Roger Chaffee, Ed White, and Gus Grissom. Okay, which one's Gus Grissom? They're in this order. I thought it was that one there, yeah, Gus Grissom. Okay, but that picture is Gus Grissom. He was, at the time, one of the most celebrated American heroes, military man, pilot, and astronaut. And he was going to be originally the first man to walk on the moon. Yeah, he was the one who was selected. In fact, that crew was the one that was selected. Yeah, and what happened was Gus Grissom started questioning NASA's ability to do what they said they were going to do. He was complaining about the technology. He was complaining about the organization of NASA and the military, and basically calling out their incompetence, yeah? Saying, we're not going to be able to do this, and you want to stick me on top of a fucking giant bomb to get me there, yeah?
Yeah, I mean,
but
just look at the man's haircut. You don't mess with
look
that.
at his haircut, man, yeah? All right? He looks like the sort of man who doesn't lie unless he's fucking ordered to. But he also looks like the sort of man who's not taking any bullshit, yeah? Gus Grissom. Fucking probably a World War II hero, you know? He was doing a test in the Apollo 1 command module, a rehearsal test. There was issues with communication. He said, how the fuck are you going to send us to the moon if I can't communicate with you and you are in a building over there? Yeah. Then there was a fire in the capsule and it bloody burnt them all to death. Although apparently if you read, and I've got a link here at the bottom of this PowerPoint, if anyone wants to pause it and copy it, I'll try to remember to stick it in the description. And it takes you to all sorts of stories about the Apollo missions and the mishaps. So these 3 pilots died. They apparently died peacefully from carbon monoxide poisoning before the pure oxygen atmosphere incinerated them. Yeah, because they did a pressure test in the Apollo 1 capsule, pumped it full of pure oxygen, and then it ignited. Claimed to be an accident. It was one of 13 accidents that happened during the build up to the first NASA flight to the moon, Apollo 11. So they killed 13 astronauts or people involved in the project, like at the hard end, you know, died. Another person who died was a reporter, which I messaged you about, and I can't find him. I can't find his name. If anyone wants to stick it in the comments, great. But there was somebody who was investigating the claims of people like Gus Grissom about NASA's inability to get people to the moon. They couldn't do it. Yeah. He was about to present a massive report, car accident.
Oh, a car accident. That's a popular one with journalists. Yeah, the good old 200 miles an hour into a tree.
Yeah, I've struggled, and to my own fault, I've been using Google still, and I've struggled to find the person. He was either a reporter, an investigator of some kind. He was chronicling all the problems with the NASA Apollo project. So that's Gus Grissom. He was calling them out. He died in an accident. His son, I think he's called Scott Grissom, has since been demanding answers because he says that and he's got evidence for it. They've investigated the old Apollo 1 command module and found that there was a bit of metal that shouldn't have been there, like underneath like a compartment in some sort of electronics or whatever, that would deliberately create a spark. So they've pressurized the capsule in a pure oxygen atmosphere. They've got their suits on and everything. Yeah. Oxygen is incredibly combustible. Yeah. In fact, you need oxygen for combustion. Yeah. It's one of the key components. So spark, pure oxygen, you're going to have a fucking hellhole, aren't you, inside the capsule? It's just going to be a furnace. So until that oxygen's all burnt up. So yeah, poor old Gus Grissom was cremated in his Apollo 1 capsule along with these guys. So, and there were a lot of mishaps like that. So I just thought I'd mention that. Okay. Then after Apollo 11 and Apollo 12, another interesting point, we had the Apollo 13 mission, which failed. It never reached the moon. And in the sort of lore of conspiracy theories surrounding the moon landings, is claimed that people were bored already. They got some grainy pictures of people stumbling around on the moon and then they come back. Apollo 12, they stumbled around on the moon a little bit more for longer periods with slightly better quality pictures, and then they came back. Yeah, there was no further achievement. Yeah, we landed on the moon. After we've done it twice, people got bored and started complaining that Mr. Ed was being taken off TV for moon landing coverage. Okay, but it was Apollo 13. Yeah, so unlucky for some. They had a space disaster, and that reignited interest in the American moon landing projects. Okay. And that apparently is a picture of the damaged Apollo 13 capsule, space capsule. I believe that's, and they is obviously separated from here in order to take this picture. But that was it. That was the image that was broadcast to the world to say, yeah, the Apollo 13 mission is in danger. We're going to save them with some fucking Bic pens and a bit of rubber tubing, or however they did it. They all become heroes. They land back, and those astronauts are also right. You know, if it did happen, rightly celebrated. But you could argue that it was just to reignite interest in the missions, and they went and made a film about it with Tom Hanks. Did quite well. Yeah, did quite well.
It's not like the media and films have ever lied about anything.
Never. And in fact, you could argue that the moon landings is the first sort of media presented psychological operation on the public. And I believe it is. For many, including me when I was younger, maybe you until we've had these conversations, always sort of felt that we had been on the moon, and that was part of who we are as a civilization, you know, our greatest achievement. And I believe there's serious doubt there ever happened.
Well, I always had like the one doubt that always got to me was just simply the radiation. Like that was like, even when I was a kid, there was just one thing where I was just like, well, hang on.
I got a video for that.
How did they solve the radiation problem?
I don't think they did, mate. I don't. So hold your horses, because NASA are going to explain that to us in a minute.
Yeah, let the experts do it.
Yeah, let NASA fucking shoot themselves in the foot. And the video. Oh, yeah, we'll come on to that in a sec. Moon rocks. I think it's the last, moon rocks. Now we get onto the stuff that the purpose of this conversation. So they brought back hundreds of pounds, kilos of moon rocks, allegedly. And these are two examples. These are kept in a case. They're probably in a protective atmosphere. And they can't be studied. The only people who are allowed to study the moon rocks are NASA. So these have also been given as gifts in cases to like dignitaries around the world. Explicit instructions to these people are they can never be taken out of the case and examined. And of course, somebody has done that, and they claim it was petrified wood they were given, not a moon rock. Again, sort of hearsay. You can look into that. However, how would they get moon rocks? Because allegedly they have been examined and their properties recorded, physical properties, isotopic ratios, what their other compositions are. Composition is as rock, radioactivity, other properties that can be tested chemically and physically. And the evidence suggests, they're not of this earth, so they've come from the moon. Yeah. That's what's being told back to the public. But actually, leading up to the moon landings, NASA and the American military had a very big interest in Antarctica. And one of the reasons they were in Antarctica was because they were looking for fucking moon rocks and rocks from Mars and asteroids. And Antarctica is the best place to go for that because the terrain, because it's white, they're easy to spot. Yeah, one reason. And I think because of its location geographically on the planet, is also an area where they
max the impacts kind of thing.
Space debris sort of collects, maybe it collects at the poles and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, and Buzz Aldrin, throughout his career, prior to and afterwards, has been a regular visitor to Antarctica. Regular. Yeah. So these rocks may well be from the moon or elsewhere, not from Earth, but they were found on Earth. As an explanation as where they got these rocks from. If you listen to, what's his name, Bill Casing, I think he's called. He worked for Rocketdyne, Rocket Aerodyne, which was a contractor for the NASA Apollo project. He claims that they took rocks from Earth and altered them chemically and physically, and then presented them as rocks not from Earth. Okay. I would rather believe that if they have got moon rocks and we didn't go to the moon, then they were found in places like Antarctica, or in deserts are another place where they look for space rocks because they're easy to spot.
I don't tend to trust stuff that can't be independently verified. So
That alone, yeah.
it's like that alone just makes me sus, because it's just like, well, if I had a nice independent analysis outside of NASA that correlated perfectly with their analysis, then I could be like, yeah, there's legitimacy here. But the very fact that they deny an analysis of it is, you know, that.
The only person, the only people who can investigate them, examine them, you know. I mean, this rock here on the left, that's been cut. You see the marks. Yeah. So I don't know what's happening, whether they've cut it to examine it or whatever. If they're presenting that as just,
it looks like a kind of rudimentary sort of a chiseling where they've just
or they, that could be like saw
maybe
blade.
they're scraping samples from the side or something.
Maybe, but it looks like it's been cut. So if it's claimed to be an original piece that hasn't been touched.
No, that's definitely been cut for sampling. I don't know if it was complete before it was cut, or if it was cut from a larger rock on the moon, but it's definitely been cut.
Yeah, and this rock on here on the right, these holes and these pores, that would be caused by heating. Yeah, so that's you get like basalts and rocks like that come from lava flows.
Trapped gases.
You find them, or if you just heat rock up, you're gonna get these pores, and this will be right through the structure, so there'll be holes inside, like cavities. So anyway, these claim to be the moon rocks that they brought back, and nobody can independently verify them. So why would they have gone, Rohan? Why would they have said they're going to go and not go? So on the screen is some spend information. I haven't put a source. Should do really. And it's the claimed spend for the Apollo project and Project Gemini, which is at the bottom, between 1960 and 1973 was 28 billion. And if we take into account for inflation, I think this inflation figures to 2019, so it doesn't account for COVID. It's 10 times the value. I reckon that 280 billion, if we had today's money, as we're standing today, probably another 100, maybe even 200 billion more. And you can imagine that this is probably a streamlined figure. Not probably. It's got to be. You would expect it would cost more than that. So one of the reasons they may have faked it was just to make some money.
Oh, like governments have been finding excuses to pour shitloads of taxpayer monies into sort of NGOs and various efforts. I mean, the governments they want to launder our money as much as possible.
And if it only costs, let's just say that figure, that 280 billion adjusted for inflation figure is correct, then going back to the moon is not possible now because it's too expensive. Is bullshit, because 280 billion is a fucking drop in the ocean these days.
Well, even what's Elon Musk worth these days? It's 1 point something trillion, right? So Elon Musk has enough personal wealth to fund an expedition to the moon.
I think his cash on paper, his value on paper is like 200 billion. It'll be about this. Yeah, but
so he could basically get one person.
Yeah. And what's the percentage? What's 28 billion of US GDP in 1973? It's quite small.
It's a fraction, like absolute fraction, isn't it?
It's quite small, when you think.
So if you talk about concerted countrywide effort, I mean, think of how much more the US GDP is now, because you've got like places like Amazon and all these places, they're in the US. So
it's about 2%. It's roughly 2%. I've got a calculator. Look, let me go check. I always have a calculator. 2.8 divided by 1.425. Times 100. Oh, I'm so good. It's what it is. I know. Oh, that's 0.196%. I think. Have I got that right? Yeah, I think
it's 0.2%.
Yeah. So I was out by a factor of 10. So it's inconceivable that we wouldn't have gone back. The cost.
Yeah, even like I mean, think of, well, especially now that we've got, like, you know, the sort of SpaceX has sort of improved a lot of the technologies around the launching and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's way more feasible now to just go to the moon, just to show that we can. I mean, like, what better way to, like, you know, to use the Zoomer term, to dab on the haters, than just send something to the moon now and just be like, here we go, and then just live stream from the moon, just have Elon Musk hold a dance party on the moon.
You know what I mean? You can fucking live stream.
Yeah, just bring up some, like, trashy rappers or something, like bring up Cardi B and, like, have a concert on the moon or something, and just to shit on people.
It's 2%. Sorry, okay, I thought it was. So it is. It's 2%. So 2% of the American national budget, and we probably now can do it. Can we do it cheaper now? Maybe, probably not.
Well, the rocket, the SpaceX has made the getting to space part cheaper, right? So getting something into space,
it's far cheaper.
I don't know how much cheaper the module technology and stuff would be, but yeah,
it's far cheaper. That's why he's a success, because he's doing it. He's getting stuff into space really cheaply. Yeah. So if it was
capitalism drives innovation, it turns out.
To be fair, if it was left to NASA, it would probably cost a fucking lot more, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, like this, just as I said before, government programs, even if it costs them like a tenner, they'll be like, yo, give me £100 and I'll get this done. Yeah. It's like, they'll always ask for more, and there'll always be loads of bloat and inefficiency. I mean, you know, without tangenting too much, just look at the NHS in the UK. It's like only about sort of 50% of the money is actually spent on what it's supposed to be. The rest is just eaten up by administration and bureaucracy.
I haven't spent 2 years working procurement for Plymouth City Council. Don't ever work for Plymouth City Council or any public service. I also spent 2 years of hell there. I mean, within a week, I realised that, you know, 75% of the taxpayers' money was just being pissed up the wall.
Yeah. It's funny how many people become small government conservatives when they work for the government.
Yeah.
Because Thomas Sowell was a socialist right up until the moment that he worked for the government.
Stop paying your council tax, yeah? Because you're wasting your money. You're not getting anything.
No taxation without representation.
Yeah, so true. Anyway, different conversation. So 280 billion, we'll just take that figure. That's a drop in the ocean. That's a drop in the ocean, isn't it?
That's Jeff Bezos's yacht.
For what you're getting out of it. Let's go. We're going back to the moon 7 times now. Yeah, we're going to have 7 missions to the moon. In those 7 missions, we could achieve wonders, couldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing. I think of potentially technology improvements have increased carrying capacity, right? Like if the missions are cheaper, we can put more on the moon. We could put a permanent laboratory on the moon. Yeah. Like a remote permanent laboratory with a you know, real-time connection to Earth to do experiments. Like, you've got loads of fancy technology like 3D printers and stuff now, so you could actually, like, design new experiments to be running this thing. Like why is this? There used to be loads of these kind of, you see them like on kids TV. There'll be like science drives to get kids to think about this stuff. Like back in our day, it was like the space elevator, like, was one of those things that everyone was on about. They're still on it.
They're still on that, yeah.
And like graphene, I think, is making that a lot more of a possibility now. Like, but yeah, it's like, why aren't we talking about establishing a permanent scientific presence on the moon? And
you think we could do it easily now? You think we could?
Well, if we could do it in the 60s, you'd think it would be easy now, considering like, even if you just look at like every single avenue when it comes to materials, computers, like the trajectory calculations and all this stuff, it's like everything has improved, every aspect of the technology. So
but we can't do it.
Yeah, think of how it should be orders of magnitude easier at this point, surely. Yeah. I mean, at this point, we even have probably radiation shielding technology to actually properly solve the radiation issue.
There probably are lightweight materials that
like some ceramic composites, you know, with like it's we do have access to a lot of science fiction level space age stuff.
But we've never gone back, apparently. You know, you would think the American military and the Russian military and now the Chinese military, but they've not been around, but you know, Russian military, you'd think, we've been to the moon. We need to get fucking military bases on there. And then it wouldn't be a space race who can get to the moon first anymore, because that's been done. It would be who can get a military outpost on the moon. Yeah, that would be the first thing. You imagine how shit scared the Americans would be if the Russians had a base on the moon with nuclear bombs pointing towards Earth. You know, and not just that, it's also the launching place to get out to other places in the solar system.
Yeah, it's the dock. You know, it's like this is the harbor for our planet. Like ideally, you know, we want to build like a synthetic ring around the moon of a dock, like just a big spaceport, like all the way around the moon.
And the reasons why it's so good for that is because it is apparently got 1/6 Earth gravity, which means building the things and shooting off from there to reach other planets is
less escape velocity,
easier. Yeah, you don't need the fuel requirement. You haven't got the force of Earth's gravity to overcome, which is the problem. You know, launching from Earth, we've got this 1G gravity. Actually, it requires a shitload of energy to get us in space using our current technology. You don't have that problem. And
yeah, assuming it's linear, it's 40% easier, right? It's 40% easier to get the stuff up. That's a huge margin.
Yeah, and so there's a cost benefit for that. Plus, you've got the materials to make the fuels on the moon. You've got materials for construction on the moon. Yeah, so you don't need to take anything to the moon. You just need to get there and make
manufacturing things on the moon.
And we could start off by sending we could start off by sending robots up there to set it up in preparation for human habitation. And yes, that might be coming in the future, but Elon Musk isn't talking about going to the moon. Why not? He's talking about Mars.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the moon is infinitely more realistic than doing anything on Mars, because it's like it's almost like a prerequisite. We need the moon to go to Mars, because once you've got that space dock on the moon, you launch Mars missions from the moon, not even from the moon's surface, but from the moon's orbit. So you don't have to deal with escape velocity at all. You can just fire straight off.
Yeah.
Because that's the great thing about space. Once you accelerate something in a direction, it's going. Like there's no friction. It's just fucking going.
Going. And if you can keep accelerating 1 year at 1G light speed.
If you have perpetual acceleration, eventually you hit near light speed. It's just an inevitability. And then you get all those fantastic Einsteinian time slowing to a crawl things.
It starts to get a bit fucked up.
Yeah, and then you fly in a reverse around the world and make time go backwards.
So why, when the cost, although 2% is a big deal, it's a big chunk of a budget, but when you think the Americans will fucking waste, and you look at the world in the last 2 years, tens of trillions have just been spunked up on the wall on bullshit and track and trace and fucking vaccines and all the rest of it. Why can't we have just gone to the moon? You know what I mean? And why haven't, if the Russians could have put a base on the moon, they would have, but they couldn't get past the radiation. Okay. So
but we've made it obvious as well. There's military applications. Like normally, it's not like there aren't serious benefits to going to the moon, right? It's not just a joyride. It's like if you can establish those presence, like you have dominance of space.
Yeah, exactly. The first one to have a base on the moon fucking is in charge. Yeah.
Because once you have dominance on space, like all earthly conflicts are irrelevant. Like I believe it's like there's a movie where they drop tungsten rods from space. Or it's like the rods have got. It's like once you have that orbital control, you can destroy anything you want whenever you want. It's like
G.I. Joe.
The G.I. Joe COVID thing. Yeah, but it's that is a type of weapon that is very realistic if you had the control of the orbit.
Now, I did calculations in one of my physics classes once about, if you had a lump of tungsten the size of a lamppost, and you dropped it from a certain height, what damage would it do? Yeah, a lamppost-sized piece of tungsten would take out London. Yeah,
because what even is the terminal velocity of a rod of tungsten? It's pretty. I imagine it's like.
Well, if you dropped it from space, then it's going to be hitting tens of thousands of meters a second.
I guess because it would accelerate above terminal velocity because of the gravity from the space, right? So
if you just drop something in the atmosphere, terminal velocity roughly bottoms out at about 120 miles an hour. most objects. Not all. I mean, like Peregrine Falcons can drop at much higher speeds. Anyway, going off. Why? When it's the most important piece of real estate on the planet, or in the universe,
exoplanet.
Yeah, it's the nearest object to us. If we want to do space exploration, if you want a military target, if you want to study the stars, if you want to find new exotic materials, if you want to test out fucking fusion reactions, if you want to, launch to Mars, you need the moon. Yeah, and yet not happened since 1960s. But our computer technology has gone from the size of a house to,
Yeah, because to be fair, I would consider it cheap, right? Like just looking at that, like 2% of GDP to get to another planetary body, that's cheap, really. That's nothing.
Yeah, and especially at a time when you're in a Cold War with an arch enemy who's trying to do the same as you in terms of its accomplishments in space. Yeah, apart from they couldn't get to the moon, even though they had better rockets. It makes no sense. Anyway, that's how much it cost. So an argument to say why did they not go to the moon? Why would they have faked it, or at least faked the footage? It might have been just to soak up a shitload of taxpayers' money. They made a fucking cheap Kubrick film, put that out a few times, and then just absorb the cash.
Well, maybe it funded black operations, because this is the thing. A lot of the times, like you need to find some way to fund stuff. I mean, like there's been instances of them selling drugs to get money for black ops.
Yeah, Vietnam going on at the same time as well. Yeah, so.
I mean, 28 billion is going to buy you a lot of covert operations in Vietnam and in other Soviet countries where you may want to do destabilization. I mean, the CIA were explicitly trained to get small amounts of people into positions where they could take down entire governments. And then, this could be a lot of that money could have gone funding to them. Yeah.
Or it's just gone into a lot of very rich people's pockets at the very top, so they can create super plans for the world in 50 years, 60 years times after this event, which would be nice.
Maybe it went to Klaus Schwab for the World Economic Forum.
He's baby's guy.
Klausy boy.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a video coming up. Okay. So another reason why they might have faked it, or say it goes back to the money, is that they couldn't technically do it. So JFK's come out. He's made this great speech. We're going to get to the moon and we're going to do the other things, blah, 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 blah. And then they come down.
Because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Yeah. And then they sat down and the NASA director and the Air Force had come up to him and said, "What the fuck did you just say, John? You fucking nutcase. How the fuck are we going to do it? We have no idea how we're going to do it. Now you've gone and set us up. The Russians are watching, going on their vodka. Yeah. And now we've got to actually achieve it. And have you ever heard of radiation, John? No, never heard of that. So there were some technical challenges that we discussed in part one, but the main one, which you mentioned earlier on in our conversation, Rohan, was the radiation. And you can see here, you can see here's the Earth. The distance of this graphic is in Earth radii. Okay. So every 2 is an Earth diameter. Okay, there's where the space station is. It's right next to Earth. It's inside the Van Allen radiation belts. Okay, so you can see we've got these belts here that come from the poles of the Earth, and the space station and all other space operations that have been manned since the last moon landing have operated in this small region of space
that's shielded by the magnetosphere.
Yeah, that's shielded. Yeah, well, that isn't saturated in incredibly dangerous, life-threatening, gonna boil you inside your aluminium can radiation.
Raw solar radiation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and we've got these belts, and you can see because of the nature of the magnetic sphere and Earth's keywords out. Come on. Yeah, you can see there's bands. Yeah, so there are some protected regions here, and this is one of the excuses that they gave, is that when they launched from America, from Cape Canaveral or wherever it was, they went through a region of space that exposed them to the minimum amount of radiation. Yeah, the route that they took through here. Okay, so that's their argument, and they were shielded by water and their food supplies and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just bullshit. Food. They irradiated their food supplies to protect themselves and then ate it. Yeah, don't make any sense.
Anyone that's played Fallout knows that won't work. You need some Radaway for that.
So anyway, the space station is literally it's not even 1 Earth radii away from Earth. It's about 100 kilometers up. Yeah, so it's nothing. The moon would be way off.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many radii is the moon away?
Yeah, the Earth is 1 radii is, I think, 4,000 kilometers off the top of my head. Yeah. So how many 4,000 kilometers can you get into 250,000? Yeah, you can get quite a lot. Yeah. In fact, I think 4,000 kilometers, and it's 400,000 kilometers away. So 4,000 into 400,000 goes what?
100. Yeah.
It's like 100 Earth radii away. Okay. So we've got 6, and the furthest we've been is that black dot there. So, but NASA, very kind of them.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
But we're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Once we travel beyond low Earth orbit, the crew will be exposed to larger amounts of radiation. So we have to design both the crew protection systems and our electronic systems to withstand this radiation.
But didn't we already go to the moon and go through the Van Allen radiation belts in '69? How come we can't go now?
Go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
That was the only copy I could quickly find.
That has to be the most bullshit answer I've ever heard in my life, though. It's like, we destroyed the technology. It's like you make the. That's like I discovered the alchemical process to turn lead into gold, but then I just burnt it.
Yeah, I forgot.
You know, I wrote it down, but I just burned it.
Yeah, I wrote over it. They recorded over their telemetry tape. That's what I did. Well, why would you do that? Shouldn't they be protected in a fucking museum? People just nerds can come up and just look at the ticker tape. Oh my God, this is the NASA moon landing telemetry data, and just watch all the binary shit go by. Yeah, man. That the very first part, he was talking about how we haven't got the technology to deal with the radiation, which is why we've never left lower orbit. You had some astronauts who allegedly were on the space station talking about how they can't wait. She couldn't wait. That the lone female astronaut with the hair like that, yeah, looked like it was gelled. Couldn't wait until humans left low Earth orbit. She wanted to be alive to see that day. And it's like, wait a sec, you can just go on YouTube and see them walking on the moon. What do you want about it? And NASA astronauts and NASA employees have made numerous statements like this that conflict or contradict what we have allegedly done. And I think that technically back in the 60s, the 70s, we didn't have the ability to pass through the radiation belts. And the Russians' argument for not going to the moon or going further out into space than they have, because they've only ever been to low Earth orbit, is for the same reason. They didn't know how to get past the Van Allen radiation belts. So a reason why they might have faked it is simply because JFK's made a statement to the fucking Russians, we're going to the moon. And then afterwards, his advisors and his experts come up to him and said, yeah, right, how are we going to do that? Because we can't do it.
Well, yeah, I wonder how many times in history something has been faked because of some outlandish statement that was made by a person in power, and then they had to, you know, sort of make it seem, because yeah, it's definitely a solid reason. I mean, honestly, there is a million reasons why they would fake it. I mean, it's not really that difficult. I mean, both financial, political, from a pure kind of power sense, you know, just because you want to one up the Russians during the Cold War. It's, you know, there's so many reasons to go to the moon or give the impression that you've been to the moon.
After making the statement that you would do it.
Yeah, because if anything, it's the bragging rights. You know, it's like, you know, they get to, it's like, this is something that the British used to be, you know, fantastic at, was going to places and putting our flag in it and being like, aha, boom, we've done it. Like, and that was the thing, like, this was America's thing. They were just like, yeah, you know, you just did it with bits on Earth. We're doing it on the moon. And it's, so yeah, there's all these incentives. So it's they definitely would want to fake it if they couldn't do it, kind of thing. Yeah. They're never going to be like, we've tried our best, but this is just a physical impossibility. Like,
and it might have been because they didn't know what was going to happen, because no one had ever been through the Van Allen radiation belts before. They might have actually gone, right, we're going to get we'll get some more Gus Grissom's and that Roger Chafer guy or whatever, those astronauts that we discussed at the beginning who died in the capsule fire, Apollo 1 fire. They might have got some of them, some expendables, and then actually sent them in the spacecraft and that, and put them through the radiation belts, and realized by the time they got to the moon and landed, they died. Yeah. So that might have happened. You know, they might have actually got to the moon. They couldn't take any pictures or videos or photographs, yeah, because there's no way, they didn't have the technology to transmit it back to Earth. They couldn't take still photographs because the radiation would have destroyed the film. So they may have got there, died, they might have crashed, yeah, they might have had an accident on the way. None of this was recorded or televised. And they've just presented the fake footage that we looked at in part 1 or as evidence of them really doing it, yeah, just to cover up the fact that they had failed or that they had killed their astronauts in doing so. And I have got another video if you want to watch it. It's silent. It's another Kubrick, apparently a Kubrick video, and it clearly shows what looks like them filming the moon landing. So I'm going to hit pause again. Okay, so question is, has somebody faked the faking of the moon landings, or is this really them faking the original footage, these images? Okay.
I mean, I could believe Stanley Kubrick would fake a fake just to fuck with people.
Maybe.
Just because he was that type of guy, but that's the only excuse I have there.
That here, whatever's going on in these images, yeah, this footage here that you're seeing right now was actually broadcasted as genuine. Yeah, this was genuine. This I've seen this before, not in this film. It looks like they got wires. You see the flashing of the light here? I don't know if you can see my cursor. Yeah, when they jump, yeah, they're on, and that flashing at the top here is
so they're simulating the lower gravity by having some sort of suspension wires to kind of.
At the beginning of that sequence, you saw that they had wires and they were on some sort of support system that was above them, holding them so they could jump up in the air. Yeah, so either that is footage, that is somebody has faked the faking of the moon landings, or that was them faking the moon landings. It's one or the other. And when you see the moon lander in the background, to fake the faking of the footage, which is what it would have to be, would be it would be an expensive undertaking for an individual to do that, or even a group of people.
I mean, yeah, literally the only explanation I could think of would just be Kubrick really wanting to mess with people because he was just that type of guy. But even then, it's like that's a very elaborate prank.
It's an elaborate prank, isn't it?
Yeah.
And or it could just be one footage of their simulations, yeah. Because if you want the one Armstrong was talking about, he talked about simulations.
Oh, yeah, training and sort of because maybe it would make sense that they would run. You would think a simulation.
Then why would you have?
Why would
take? Why?
Yeah,
why would you have that? Yeah.
As I said, it is difficult to, given that you don't have the 100% knowledge of the source of all of this, but yeah, it's as with a lot of these things, the suspicions compound to a point where it's like one of these things could potentially be explained away as just some sort of error, but yeah, to me, I'm always going to go back to the hard sort of physical science restriction of it, where it's just like, doesn't the Van Allen belt cook you? It's just, doesn't it?
And on the moon.
Because space is like, it's a vacuum, but it's full of radiation. It's full of like you've got naked solar radiation. As soon as you leave a magnetosphere, it's why Mars is scorched. Like why Mars is desolate, because it lost its atmosphere and its magnetosphere. Because it's not spinning anymore, right? The core is dead. That's why you have the whole Total Recall original film where they reignite the core so that it starts spinning again, so that it gets the magnetosphere, so that you can actually build an atmosphere. And it's like, if it wasn't for a magnetosphere, the planet Earth would just be a barren rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what these people are exposed to when they get past that. So maybe I'm overstating it. This is the thing. It's like maybe there's some expert that's like, the bay, it's not that bad. It's just a few X-rays.
The Russians stated the same. They couldn't do it, and people go, "Why didn't the Russians call out?" And we'll talk about the Russians now. Since it's a nice little segue. Why didn't the Russians call out the Americans for faking it? You think that would be great in their propaganda war, and. At the time there was a Cold War. There was an ongoing non-kinetic warfare, information, propaganda war going on between the Russians, JFK here, we've got the JFK of America, and the Russians. Who's that? Is he called Khrushchev?
Would it be Gorbachev or before Gorbachev?
That's Gorbachev. I think it's Khrushchev. I think he's called
Khrushchev. Yeah. Because Gorbachev was like the last one.
Yeah, he was the 80s. Anyway, whoever the Russian leader was, that areas. Yeah. So why wouldn't the Russians? And everyone goes, the Russians would have been watching the moon landings. They would have been recording them. They would have had them on radar and all the rest of it. And because the theory is the astronauts just orbited the Earth and then landed again, and the Russians would have been able to watch that. It depends on how good the Russian, tracking technology was back then in the 60s and 70s. Because, if it's an unknown orbit.
If you don't know something that's happening, your instruments are very specific. You'd have to be able to point it to that thing. And there's also the fact that they felt that they just looked petty. Right, like maybe the sort of media hegemony of America was dominant enough that they'd just be decried as conspiracy theorists, and they just wanted to move into other things, and they didn't want to turn it into this kind of schoolyard spat, where they're like, oh, you just faked it. But
they may have actually said to the Americans, hey, we know you didn't do it, and there have been plenty of...
and they got paid off.
Senior Russians have come out and laughed about the moon landings. They have made, without actually saying they faked it, they've made that there are plenty of military personnel from the time and older generals now, Russian scientists, who have poured scorn on the moon landings. They may have known and said to the Americans, we fucking know you didn't do it. Yeah, we're going to hold that against you. We've got that.
The Russian psyche loves doing that, like holding knowledge over people.
We've got this skeleton in your closet, and we can release it at any time. Yeah, and if the Russians have got good evidence to suggest that the Americans faked the moon landings, which they may well have. That's gold, isn't it? That piece of information is fucking.
That's great blackmail material. Yeah. It's just like, especially when you're talking about an information war, like you've got the ultimate information blackmail.
It's still ongoing.
Yeah, but and this is the thing. It's like back then it may not have been relevant, but if you look at someone like Putin, and like he was part of the KGB, he has ties going all the way back to this period. Like you can guarantee he still has that information at hand, and how the climate has changed now. Maybe we're reaching the point where you never know. Maybe Russia will just drop some big thick dossier, and they'll be like, oh, hang on.
A real dossier, yeah.
Not a manufactured one by a British MI6 agent. No.
The Russians, and if anyone does know, if they did fake it, if somebody does know, it'll be Putin. Putin will know.
Putin knows a lot of stuff that he doesn't tell people about. That's for sure.
And the reasons why the Americans may have faked it was mainly because it was part of a propaganda war against Russia. And you can't argue that the moon landings did a lot of good for America.
The space race in general was basically a giant propaganda war. Let's be real. Or it was a sort of a military technology advancement project disguised as a propaganda war.
Yeah.
Because there's only one reason that two countries at war want to advance their rocket technology.
Yeah. There's only one reason, and that's to drop bombs. Exactly. So it was a great propaganda war, alluded to in the astronaut conversation that we put at the beginning. It was about American superiority, American technical achievement, and they could use that not just against the Russians, but they could use it against their own public. Yeah.
And against their allies, right? It's a bargaining chip to be like, look at how powerful we are. You should side with us and not the Russians.
And America, who was already becoming the dominant force on the planet, taken over from Great Britain, the space race and their achievements with regards to the Apollo project and the moon landings did wonders for them on the world stage, did wonders for them in terms of status, did wonders for them in terms of their economics.
Because it's an expression of might that doesn't come from war, right? It's almost like this pure expression of might, because it's technological, scientific might. So it's like a nuclear bomb that isn't evil, right? It's like you're in awe of their superiority technologically, but it's not a military weapon, or at least outwardly facing not a military weapon.
But from a military point of view, right. Yeah, because we're now the top. We're now top of. We don't even.
But to the public, it seems like because winning hearts and minds has been an American foreign policy thing since their inception, really, in the world stage. So it's definitely their strategy, and it has their hallmarks on it.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why they could have faked it. In fact, it'll be all these reasons. The financial reasons, the fact that they technically couldn't do it, but also because it was the greatest opportunity at that time to use mass media propaganda to not just influence their enemies, but influence their allies, their public, influence everyone, and create a new narrative for the world going on forwards. We're no longer in the industrial age. We went into the space age. Yeah. We went into the space age. And who was at the forefront of the space age? America, because they put people on the moon. Yeah. And that just that storyline itself, where America is the central element to the story, is amazing. And that sort of it creates a profit in so many different directions, all at once. So I think that another reason what they couldn't do is JFK make that statement, we're going to the moon.
Yeah, they couldn't not go to the moon. Yeah.
Then they
regardless of whether they actually could reach the moon or not, they had to reach the moon.
They had no other alternative, is fake it or make it, and they couldn't make it. Yeah, so they had to fake it. Yeah, otherwise if they didn't do, I mean, a little thought experiment, what would have happened if they just come out and said, we lost our astronauts on the way, they died, yeah, all hail the astronauts, we couldn't get to the moon, the radiation was too much, whatever, we could technically do it. Yeah, what if they'd come out and done that and shown the disaster, you know, and funerals of the dead astronauts and all the rest of it, national heroes? How would the Russians have been able to engage with that for their own propaganda purposes? And who would now be the dominant power? Would communism have won without the fucking moon landings?
That would, I don't know, that would be an interesting curveball, because from what I know of like sort of PR and political or this sort of Machiavellian shit, the problem with something like that is that Russia's almost forced into a moment of union over commiseration, right? Like, because the only noble thing to do would be to join America in mourning. Like, if they were to hold it over them, it would be very callous, very petty, and would affect their image. Because at the end of the day, like, these are like two political parties playing for the middle ground. You know, they're playing for all these countries in between. So Russia has to seem like they'd have to make that better man position and be like, you know, even like you'd end up with a statement like, even though we are bitter rivals in some sense, we join America in condolence for their brave, astronauts and the effort. And although they did not reach the moon, they gave the greatest sacrifice so that we could advance our knowledge. You know, like they posture, but they wouldn't rub it in. And I don't know if it would necessarily have really changed the ultimate result of things. It may have brought them together in a bizarre way. Like, it may have actually ended up ending the Cold War to some degree.
It could have.
It could have been a bridge that would have connected the Russian and American people, because the Russians had their own space tragedies.
Yeah. And going on from what you're saying now about creating a bridge, actually now the Russians and the Americans do have a joint space program because they work together on the ISS. And in fact, since the end of the shuttle program, after Columbia died, the Americans were using Russian space technology to get their astronauts up into the ISS. So, you know, they still work together. Another reason why, you know, the Russians might be tight-lipped about the, you know, any false American claims, you know, because they're working together now, and there's money involved. And it also sort of, you know, means that the fact that the Russians and the Americans are working together on the space program also sort of it poo-poos the whole Russian narrative, doesn't it? That Russia are bad, they're the enemy, they're misinformationists, the Cold War still going on.
Yeah.
You know,
like every scapegoat, it's bad when you need it to be bad. You know, it's like, oh, more Russia when you need a scapegoat, but
they're in space together.
yeah. I mean, it's like really the only thing that I would really criticize Russia about is their treatment of Ukraine. I mean, like, other than that, it's like they're not that bad, really. But they keep bullying the shit out of Ukraine.
Yeah, well, everywhere's a conflict point at the moment in the world. I don't see that getting any better. I've just seen it exasperating rapidly over time. But no, different conversation. Okay, so anyway, Cold War, propaganda purposes are reasons why it was faked, if it was. And
failure was not an option,
Yeah, failure was not. I forgot I had that on there. All right, and finally, here's my favorite. So Rohan's not going to be all on this. You need to have an open mind, mate. Okay, open your mind to the possibilities. Open your
mind.
Yeah. Okay. There is already somebody on the moon, and I am all in on this. Not all in, but I've convinced myself that this is a fucking legitimate reason. Yeah, I've thought it through so many times. Okay. The real reason why they might have wanted to go to the moon is because they knew somebody was up there, already there. Whoever that might be, we'll call them aliens. We've had the conversation of what alien means, just not us. Could be other humans, could be the gods, it could be little grey men, whatever. Or when they got there, they discovered that there were people already there, or there was someone else already there. And obviously they couldn't show footage of that, could they? Not that they could take footage on the moon. And that the reason why we've never been back is because that we have been warned off. Yeah, and this ties into UFOs and ties into my pyramid conversations of ancient civilizations and god myths and the ancient astronaut theory. But there are, and these pictures are not very good. They're just there for illustration purposes. Objects on the moon that look artificial. There are plenty of stories and rumors out there in the internetverse of NASA altering images of the moon and airbrushing out objects, buildings, structures, bridges, things that look like radar dishes. There's a whole documentary, or you can find it on YouTube, probably by the History Channel or Ancient Alien guys, about structures on the moon. Same with Mars. This particular one that's been magnified here, so this is a picture from the moon, is a tall object. And we know it's tall because there is this shadow. And obviously this object has been analyzed and it's really tall. It's hundreds and hundreds of meters tall. Yeah, it's considered artificial and doesn't match anything else found on the moon, especially in that region. Okay, so that's just one image. Again, these images are just more for illustration purposes, and I suspect the people, if there's the people who are watching this video got this far, well done, will be aware of some of the anomalous pictures found on the moon. So here's another one. This is a picture from the moon, the bottom left-hand corner. I think that one's been cleaned up using computers, which doesn't help. And you can see that's in the middle. I think those are both the same picture. Another quite famous one, unusual picture in the center bottom. Another unusual picture, looks like something's traveling across the surface maybe, or as an object creating a shadow. And there are loads and loads of these. And there's a guy called Richard Hogan. He's a bit old now and a bit dottery, and he does sound a little bit crazy sometimes, but he talks about this in detail about pyramid type structures, obelisks, domes, other anomalies on the lunar surface, in particular on the dark side of the moon, which isn't facing the Earth. And the reason why I talk about that, and I've discussed it before, I think we discussed it in the UFO conversation that we had, was that you can make a really, really good argument of why somebody might be on the moon if they come to this planet. It's a perfect hiding place. It's a perfect base for observation. You can't be detected. There are other reasons like natural resources, and it's easy to work on and build on and travel from. And it also feeds into a lot of the myths. So if anyone's been wondering what the picture is in the background for my in the background there, it's these guys who are the Dogon. And the Dogon believed that their gods, who they called star gods, the Nomu, which is what they're dressed up here on this picture, they came from Sirius, but not from Sirius A, which we can see of our own eyes, but from Sirius B, which is the little dot to the sort of I'm trying to think what direction that is there, southeast of Sirius A. They had that recorded in their mythology as the origin of their gods, dating back tens of thousands of years, or thousands and thousands of years. Whereas we had only just discovered Sirius B in about the last 50 years using modern telescopes, yeah, because we can't see it. It's hidden by the glare of Sirius A. So it was always said, how can the Dogon possibly know about this star? But not only that, they say that they're space gods. They arrived on the moon or moved the moon into place, and actually the Earth never had a moon until their star gods arrived. So, and there's so many weird things about the moon in terms of its structure, its size, its position around Earth. We're going to talk about the last slide is about Einstein and his theory of relativity and how the moon comes into proving his theory. Our moon's the largest moon for our planet. On our moon, the ratio between sizes is unique. Yeah, the moon is far too big for our planet. Yeah, it's unusual. It creates a perfect solar eclipse. It's the only moon in the solar system that does that. It's cavernous or hollow. Yeah. So this is going to poo-poo my claim that they faked the moon landings. Apparently, NASA crashed one of the moon landing. They crashed like a satellite into the moon, and the moon chimed or vibrated like a bell, resonated like a bell for hours afterwards. And that's been recorded by NASA. Yeah, that can go check that. Yeah, so the conclusion from that is the moon is not hollow like it's all cored out in the middle, but full of caverns. Yeah. And it's tidally locked, so only one side of the moon ever faces the Earth. It rotates at the same speed as it's moving around. Yeah, so it's rotating as it moves around, and so one side of the moon never faces the Earth. Anyway, these are the non-moon, but it's not just the Dogon tribe that talk about star gods and have moon mythologies. It's in all of our it's in all of that sort of ancient Indian tribe cultures and myths. See, it's in our myths. If we extrapolate information from the Bible or from other ancient texts, you can sort of fit a UFO, alien, someone else storyline to it. And so I take I think there's a lot of credit to say that there may well be somebody else already on the moon. People are probably thinking I'm crazy now. Rohan's just trying to keep up with what I'm saying. And it might have been that we were warned off. And to say that UFOs is a load of rubbish, the Pentagon right now has just given instructions for a formal UFO investigation unit that's now sort of coming out of the dark world and into the light world of visibility. Yeah, so to say that UFOs are a load of nonsense, maybe, but the Pentagon is now officially, we always knew they were, but the American defense establishment has now officially got programs in place to investigate UAPs, as they're calling them, unidentified aerial phenomena. Yeah. So to dismiss that there's somebody else on the moon as folly or crazy talk should really give it more thought. Yeah. And then finally, the other thing I just wanted to bring up, saves us doing a part 3 row, on the moon, is I tried to get it because I was going to do a whole thing just on ancient tribes and moon mythologies. Is actually the phenomena of the solar eclipse of our moon, and the only not only is it the only moon that gives a perfect solar eclipse, so its silhouette, its size and distance relative to the sun and its position between Earth is perfect to create an image where we only see the corona of the sun. Okay, and Einstein's general theory of relativity suggested that space-time can be bent, and it allows, and therefore light can travel and bent. It can travel in a curved manner, depending on space, depending on gravity. Okay, so but no one could prove that this was true. And the experiment that they came up with to prove or disprove Einstein's theory of general relativity was to have a look at a solar eclipse. And there were teams all over the world back in the 20s, 30s, and 10s that were going out and monitoring solar eclipses and trying to see if they could see stars that should be behind the sun, but because of the bent path of light created by the curving of space, which was created by the gravity of the sun, yeah, it would appear that the star wasn't behind the sun. Do you see what I mean? So here's the actual position.
So stars that would normally be blocked by the light of the sun, they could now see, like they knew where the position of the star was relative
to the sun,
or where it should be,
and where it appeared, where the star actually appeared to be when they looked at a solar eclipse. And they couldn't do this when there wasn't an eclipse because the sunlight was too bright. Yeah, so they couldn't take pictures of the stars. Yeah, same reason what they're claiming to say that they couldn't see stars when they were on the moon, apart from Michael Collins, yeah, because he wasn't on the moon. Yeah, so here's the actual location of the star, directly behind the sun, but the sun's gravity bends the light around itself as a giant object. And so when an observer on Earth here on the left-hand side, it would appear that the star's location wasn't behind the sun. Okay, because that's the light. The light's traveling in this direction. So it appears that the light has come from over here, when actually the light has come from behind the sun that has just been bent around it. And actually, this proved Einstein's theory of general relativity and the curved fabric nature of space and time. Yeah, with space-time. Okay, but this could not have been done unless our moon was exactly the same size as it is, and its position it is perfect. Yeah. So there's a lot of people, crazies like me, who go, maybe the moon was placed there and it was that size so that we can make this discovery, and it's part of a teaching process that is encouraging the development of mankind's scientific knowledge. Yeah. And then the moon was actually placed in Earth in its orbit with its particular size and speed and phase lock orbit and all the rest of it by a higher intelligence. And that higher intelligence may still be on the moon now, or it may be one of these flying objects flying around our skies. They are flying objects flying around our skies that we don't know what they are, that the Pentagon have now officially said they're going to investigate. Anyway, so final reason, because Neil Armstrong, or alien, if you say it backwards, because of that, I thought I'd bring in the whole alien stuff, because I can't fucking help myself.
Why not?
Well, I can't help myself but bring it up, because I believe that it's a real consideration.
Yeah. Nothing's outside the realm of possibility. I mean, obviously, you won't be surprised to know that me personally, I'm more of a fan of coincidence rather than providence in this case, because it's the whole something's perfect, it has to have been created argument is one I've heard before. But because as far as I know, it's like what's the orthodox explanation for the moon is that some sort of big collision that was happening during the early formation of Earth when it was still predominantly molten, effectively just flung a chunk off.
Debris coalesced and that, but there are other theories that it was an object that was captured.
Yeah, but this is the thing. I definitely accept that there's all of these like incredibly low probability things that line up, but it's just like what if all these things lining up is what allowed life and all these things to precipitate on Earth? It's why, given the observations that we to date, we have not been able to see another civilization in our so far observable sphere, is maybe you do need these kind of Goldilocks conditions for these things to happen. But yeah, it's I think one of the very interesting things is the ringing. I like the idea of the moon ringing like a bell. And the fact that it's the perfect size for an eclipse. A lot of these things is, you can't deny that these are incredibly convenient coincidences, the same way that, we have the exact gravity we need to kind of form these bodies that are capable of thinking
we wouldn't have the climate and environment that we have on our planet right now if it wasn't for the moon. So the moon.
So for what we understand of life, at least silicon-based life, we're in what they call that Goldilocks band, where it's like we have all of these conditions required for life to develop. If as I said, if aliens are on the moon, it's just like my middle ground explanation would be like, what if there was like tech? What if sort of like fragments of things like space debris had collected on the moon that wasn't just asteroids? It was, fragments of ships, of things like, what if they sent an expedition? They were like, oh shit, like this isn't just a moon rock, this is technology.
Yeah.
Like, and then what if the Russians got, what if we're basically dealing with, like, I often point it out, what if Stargate was trying to tell everyone, like, because they talk about the Russians and the Americans allying over sort of, alien technology. They mention Antarctica a shitload, it's like, it's like, if we're gonna follow the whole, like, sort of Project Mockingbird CIA type mentality, it's like, what if things like Stargate are kind of bleeding out that underlying truth? Maybe there was some sort of technology on the moon that facilitated this pact to keep it all secret. Maybe.
Absolutely, and that's what Richard Hogan talks about. And there's a lot, the ancient Astros, there's a lot of, he talks, his thing is all about, he's not saying that there's people on the moon now. He's saying there is evidence of and artifacts and objects on the moon and on Mars that look like they were man-made, and they look artificial. And there's a lot of, not evidence, but a lot of people claiming that there's evidence of artifacts, of unusual objects, not just on the moon and Mars, but throughout the solar system. And Buzz Aldrin, and if you wanted to, you could probably YouTube this quickly, is Buzz Aldrin makes a statement which says people are going to ask questions about the monolith on Phobos, which is the Mars's satellite.
Yeah, it's like a weird potato-shaped one, because there's Phobos and Deimos. They're both like potatoes.
There's an obelisk on Phobos, and he says that. He says people are going to wonder how it's got there. Yeah, one day we're going to have to go out there and find out. Yeah, Buzz Aldrin has said loads of weird shit, including with one of the left-wing. Is it Steve? Sure, it begins with Steve, not Carell. I don't know. He's fucking one of the woke fuckers in America who does a chat show.
Colbert.
Yeah. Buzz Aldrin was on the Colbert show, and I mean, he basically said, "Oh, we fabricated the footage." He basically said it. I mean, but like a joking sort of way. "Oh, we created a lot of it, in the studio." Blah blah blah. Of course they did. So anyway,
well, even originally, like when in our first video, it's just like there is that whole thing of like maybe they did get to the moon by some miracle, but all the footage was so completely destroyed by the radiation that they had to fake the footage, even though they actually went to the moon. Because that's still a possibility. Because I think there is way more evidence to show that they faked a large portion of the footage than they faked the whole thing itself. But even, I still think that, the ultimate evidence that stands against this is the radiation. It's just this hard fact. It's the elephant in the room that no matter how many explanations you try to get around it, you're saying that these dudes passed through, naked solar radiation in a tin can.
Twice.
With a little bit of water. Twice, yeah. And they went, and the dude was out there. It's just,
and all the rest of the time they're on the moon.
Yeah, and it's like, if anything, I'd believe that they actually got to the moon if all of these dudes died of cancer like 30 years ago.
Exactly. And
I'd be like, yeah, but the fact that, like, who's still, like, isn't it Aldrin still, is he still alive, or are they all dead now?
No, Buzz Aldrin's, I think Collins is dead as well, but Buzz Aldrin's still alive.
Yeah, but Armstrong died, right? And Collins died.
Armstrong's gone.
Yeah, but Aldrin's still around. So it's like, I mean, I just, as I said, it's, when it comes to the alien narrative, there's enough things up to speculation that it's just like, I can't really say either way.
For me, it's more of, it's a good thought experiment.
Well, that's the thing. I'm always willing to entertain stuff. It's just like, because it's always just like, at the end of the day, there's many explanations for a lot of stuff, and I tend to go for the whole, Occam's razor approach, where it's like the simplest one tends to be the thing, but sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes, Occam himself, may have been wrong and stuff. Sometimes the complicated explanation is actually the true, or sometimes it's multiple things working together.
My thought process is very simple. Yeah, there are undisputed objects in our atmosphere flying around that have been recorded, tracked with lots of fucking instrument and data and that we do not know that they are. And this has been going on for a long time, and it's always been denied, and now they're coming out and saying we're investigating it. Yeah, they might be just soaking up money for the defense industry, of course. Yeah, but now they're coming out and saying they're investigating it, and there's a fucking huge number of people, really important, credible people, who are saying they've seen these objects. And people go, oh, they could be phenomena, they could be fucking, environmental phenomena, they could be secret military projects, blah blah blah. Okay, maybe. The other, and it's a rational explanation. I don't know why it isn't. The other explanation is it isn't us and it's someone else flying around in our atmosphere in technology that we haven't got. If that bit is true, it's someone else, alien, ET, advanced humans, fucking reptilians, whatever, then they're on the moon.
Yeah. Well, to act like it isn't a possibility that these could be aliens, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, if you have the technology to explore space, you easily have the technology to covertly observe, developing planets, and we are starting to reach the point where we're interesting. Yeah. We're starting to get, if you use the whole Star Trek model, we're getting to that first contact point. Yeah. Like, the second Elon Musk really builds his spaceship, maybe, the Vulcans come down and bam, there we go. Like, we are definitely becoming a lot more interesting from a galactic point of view.
We would be interesting anyway.
And the moon, but yeah, the moon is a perfect place if you want to have an observation base. If you want to base it as some sort of like giant science experiment, like, maybe we are like, what's that South Park episode where Earth is a TV show, and it's like, what if we're some giant TV show where we're being broadcast as like this sort of weird, you've got this alien version of God, why did his name just pop out of my head? David Attenborough just going like, and here you see the humans, they're burning down this city because of some political disagreement again. Like it's maybe this is the thing. At the end of the day, sometimes it is fun to consider the wilder possibilities, because there's nothing to say that can't be possible, but that it's, when the further you get into these weirder sort of things of the farther reaches of science, the more there is room for these crazy things. Because this is where, like, the reason I said that argument used to be familiar, this used to be where God was. Like, if you talk with creationists, that's where God is. It's like the reason why the moon is perfect and those things is because God made it.
Yeah.
And it's like, fair enough. I mean, if that's how you want to explain it,
I'm not saying that I'm not, I recognize my.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the arguments have equal weight necessarily. I'm just saying that because there are regions of uncertainty, it's arrogant for science to say that they necessarily have a better answer than any other answer all the time. It's like sometimes some of the greatest answers come from people who are kind of a bit outside of what is the orthodox. It's like none of the world's greatest thinkers have exactly been orthodox people. I mean, Einstein himself was a believer. Like, he believed that he disproved God with his theories, and he spent the entire rest of his life trying to basically scientifically prove God, to show the hand of God in a physical equation. Like, so it's these people, they all have their own. And there's suggestions that there were physical differences with his brain that allowed him to think the way he did. So, weirdos that think outside the box are always the people that progress science. I mean, the orthodox people just maintain it.
So listen to Darren. Yeah, Darren reckons there's aliens on the moon.
Yeah, it's aliens. Yeah, they're living in the moon. It's the
And
clangers, man.
They're responsible for everything. Everything's going on here.
No, man, the clangers are in there. There's the soup dragon cooking the soup in the cavities in the moon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, right. So on that note, we've come to the end of our conversation. But I've got another video. And it's just a final speech from our friend Alien
Boy,
Neil Armstrong. That's the sort of applause you would expect, yeah? He landed on the moon.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. President, members of Congress, fellow astronauts, ladies and gentlemen. Wilbur Wright once noted that the only bird that could talk was the parrot, and he didn't fly very well. So I'll be brief.
That's key.
This week, America has been recalling the Apollo program and reliving the memories of those times in which so many of us here, colleagues here in the first rows, were immersed. Our old astrogeology mentor, Gene Shoemaker, even called in one of his comets to mark the occasion with spectacular Jovian fireworks. And reminding us once again of the power and consequence of celestial extracurricular activities. Many Americans were part of Apollo, about 1 or 2 in each 1,000 citizens, all across the country. They were asked by their country to do the impossible, to envisage, to design, and to build a method of breaking the bonds of Earth's gravity, and then sally forth and visit another heavenly body. The principal elements, leaving Earth, navigating in space, and descending to a planet unencumbered with runways and traffic controls, would include the major requirements necessary for a spacefaring people. Today, a space shuttle flies overhead with an international crew. A number of countries have international space programs. During the space age, we have increased the knowledge of our universe 1,000-fold. Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief. Those challenges are yours. In many fields, not the least of which is space, because there lies human destiny.
There we go. So yeah, he talked about the parrot being the pilot. Yeah.
Doesn't fly very well, and you've got to strip back layers of truth.
Yeah, but the parrot doesn't fly very well, but it's really good at repeating what it's told. That's what parrots do, don't they? They parrot.
Yeah.
And yeah, peeling back one of truth's protective layers. And, you know, obviously, once he said that, everybody in the conspiracy world, in the moon landing, the hoax world, UFO world, went fucking mental. He's admitted it, yay! You know, he's like, but it's an unusual thing to say. So,
well, no, yeah, we have people do choose words carefully, and it's definitely a very interesting choice of words there. I mean, he could have chosen many different words, but he went with that for a reason. So,
yeah, and when he talked about, you know, being, you know, the parrot being a ship pilot, he then looked back at Bill Clinton and said, "I will be brief." Yeah, Bill Clinton was there. Yeah, you didn't see him on screen.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
don't worry, I'll be brief. I'll be brief. I won't say any more, but just let me get a few Masonic shit out, you know, because I've got a karma. Yeah. So, yeah, and I don't think he really gave, you know, that appearance by him in that video is a very it was a rare appearance by him, and even then he looked awkward. You know, that might have just been him naturally. Doesn't like being in front of cameras, in front of people. But he looked awkward. He looked awkward, and he looked like he was being quite deliberate, like you said.
Yeah, he didn't. That's the thing. If anything, he was way more composed and sort of. It was a very different from that in the first interview, right? Like I could tell the words he was saying there were genuine, and they were coming from him and not externally coached. Like he was being very careful to think, like, how do I express this in that read between the lines way? And it does seem that he chose these riddles, you know, and it's like, you know, sitting in the presence of students that would probably know some of the physical limitations to this.
Yeah.
And they're probably sat there thinking, like, after he said that, like, well, okay, so what if I operate on the assumption that they never went to the moon, and that's a problem that I have to solve, right? You know, this is the thing. It's like, what if he's trying to say, like, actually, you need to solve this problem that we just acted like we solved, but didn't.
Yeah, but we don't know how to do it. You know?
It's like we destroyed the technology.
Solved, we've got a problem. We've got a problem when it is solved, haven't we? Because someone's going to go to the moon and go, where's all the leftovers? Where's all the...
You have to redesign all that technology we destroyed, you know.
Anyway, so did we go? So we're not going to do another moon one.
Oh man, I definitely doubt it way more than I did before. I'm definitely more in the no camp than the yes camp this then, I think.
I don't think we went, and I think one of the reasons is because of the aliens. I do think that.
Well, I'm going to side with the radiation.
And because they just didn't have a technology to do it. And it soaked up a lot of money. It's all those reasons, all combined, all rolled up nicely in one beautiful little conspiracy. Anyway, cheers, Rohan. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you can, share the video, because all my fucking social media platforms have been crushed. They are cancelling me. I'm being hunted down everywhere. So do that for me, and I'll be well appreciated. See if we can get this one more than 1,000 views. See you later. Cheers, Rohan.
See you later.
We are the news.